join me on a movement and breath exploration with a focus on the pelvis. You may find that the benefits of this don't just apply to your pelvis, such as increased awareness, sensation, strength, flexibility, but also to other areas of your body, whether it be more lightness in your shoulders, more comfort in your knees, your feet, also feeling just calmer, more present and more contented. That sounds like a nice package. But there is a focus, especially on pelvis, because complications with pelvic floor health can make our lives rather uncomfortable, miserable, worrisome. So there is an extra attention into this area as we move. First thing I want to do is to waken the body in an overall sense, and that will increase our blood circulation, but it also increases our brain-body connection, which is really, really important. And I've got here to do that some Franken method balls. You could just use your hands. But the Franken method balls give a little extra sensation. These ones have texture as well, so double trouble with sensation. So we can just begin by tapping down on the left and up the right of the belly. We'll do it by gesture. And I'm going to make sure I'm breathing as I do this, and just feeling what it feels like. I'll now start to move to the legs. And wherever you can reach, all over the legs, the front, the legs, the back of the legs, wherever you can reach that's comfortable. And you can make your own rhythm and feel the rhythm that you're making. It could be like together, thump, 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 or separate, or firm or light. We're going to do the outside of the legs, the inside of the legs. And you don't have to stay static as you do this. You can move your body while you're tapping any way you like. Once you feel you've got the legs nicely done, we're going to do a tap to the bottom. This might be a little bit firmer. And you can also do a few little curtsies, doing like that, or a little step to the side and curtsy. Anything that feels fun. It doesn't have to be what I'm doing, as long as you're not sipping a cup of tea. That's for later. Okay, and we can use a little side to side, and to the front of the hip joint here, and to the chest. You want to make any noise. We can go to the back body and any noise. I'm going to go to the side. Tapping the diaphragm, which is attached to all your ribs here. And to the other side. Lovely. And then we can tap a little higher toward the shoulders and the neck. And then we'll go to one arm. Tap the arm, move the arm, joints, shoulder, elbow, wrist, fingers. And we can shake that arm out in all different directions. And a little test, a little consumer test to see, did that do anything with regard to my arm? So if I lift that arm and then compare on the other side, do I feel a difference? The answer is yeah, this arm feels lighter, looser through all of those joints mentioned. This arm's a little more sort of stodgy and like brick alike. So my brain gets that update. And now I would like the same for this side to feel as light and fluid and relaxed. You see what you notice. So I'll just begin by tapping and move the arm. And also allowing breath. And the back of my attention is always, is the breath flowing comfortably. A little bit of awareness on that too. You can feel the shake of the flesh on bone. Feel the boniness versus the flesh. And what's the other hand feeling? Tapping. Okay, I'll shake that arm out. And we'll just do a little bit of tapping for the head. You can move the head as you tap, you can do that too. Hearing the noise that it makes. And a little soft to the jaw. Okay. I'm going to do something for the feet because we would also like awareness into the feet too. So before we do the feet, so balls are on the floor, just take that moment to notice your body now. Process what you feel. It may seem like a bit of a tingle or a sense of life. You might just feel a little more lifted in your posture. Notice what you notice. To add deliciousness to the cake, if you like cakes, we're going to roll the ball underneath the foot. You might need to hold a chair because I want you to put a bit of pressure onto the ball. So you're starting to massage the very bottom of the foot as if you're like kneading dough. So, you know, not too kind of but actually put some pressure on. And this ball, because it has dimples, it gives such a lot of feedback from the foot. You can really feel the shape of the ball. If you have a smooth ball, then you can feel the smoothness. And if you don't have a ball at all, you could do this with a cloth, a rolled up cloth, and feel the softness of the cloth. And we can do a point and flex action of the foot over the ball. And then we can keep the heel on the ground and just slide the big toe side down and the pinky toe side down. So we're getting a twisting action of the foot, a kind of wringing out of the foot. Okay. So that's enough just to warm up gently with the foot now, but let's do our contrast and how does that foot feel compared to the other side? Maybe not just the foot, but through the whole knee-hip connection too. So I feel my unmassaged foot, it feels rather tight, stiff. Balance, if I try to balance on the side I did, feels pretty smooth. A little more shaky on this side. It may even have impacted my arm, my shoulder joint here. Yeah, maybe a little. And you're tuning into what you sense. Not what I sense, I'm sharing my experience. But the more you practice this and tune in, the more you sense yourself, the more you're able to apply yourself to good movement. Because you can sense it, feel it. You know what, I want to do this on the other side. Wonky pants. Okay, so put a little pressure on. And we're massaging the plantar fascia at the base of the foot. And the reason we might feel something different higher up in the chain in the shoulder, or it could be in the hip joint, or anywhere along that chain in the knee, it's because the plantar fascia at the bottom of the foot connects through your Achilles, the back of the leg, all the way up into your back and beyond. So we're doing something for the whole body, not just the foot, but also for the pelvis and up on to the very top. So then we can do a point and a flex here, rolling the foot on the ball, and then heel to the floor, and just tick-tocking the foot from side to side. It's better without my socks on actually, so if you want to take your socks off, even better, more sensation. Okay. And then let's just stand and notice. Let's not move that to the side. So standing, how's your posture? I wonder if that made a nice sort of flexible hip joint. Pretty nice. So you try and test. So we're going to sit down onto the chair and we'll be using the balls under our butt shortly on the chair. But first I want to go through a little bit of exploration of the pelvic floor. A picture paints more than 1,000 words. So I'm going to show a picture of the pelvic floor. In fact, let's have a look first of all, even better, at the bones of the pelvis. And then we can feel these ourselves, and then we'll look at the picture, it will be even better. So, pelvis, it's got two separate halves, and these two parts relate more to our legs, and this to our spine. You can see this is your spine going all the way down, and it has, like a tailbone at the bottom, a coccyx, that is movable. And there is movement between these particular joints. But where we can, we're going to feel the bones where we can sense the most movement. Our pelvic floor, which is a multi-complex thing, but put in simple ways, approachable ways, it is attached to these particular bones that we can see here. So at the front, there's a meeting here of the pubic symphysis. So this is the pubic bone area. It's two halves that meet here. And pelvic floor muscles attach on the inside of here. They also attach at the sides here into these sitting bones. So move on your sitting bones a little bit from side to side, or shuffle a little forward and back. And I know you've got to say, oh, it's all fat there, something like that. It's good. You want a bit of cushion there. So what you're moving on, I hope, is your sit bones and not your tailbone, right? Because if you're on your tailbone, look at the posture, it's not so good, you won't breathe so well. Your pelvic floor is going to be a little bit cut off, a little bit dead. So we want to make sure we're on the sit bones. So the two sit bones, we'll call this the pubic bone, or it's a pubic symphysis, a meeting of these two pubic, like these branches here. So pubic bone we'll call two sit bones and tailbone. And because all of the different layers of the pelvic floor are suspended and attach onto these are our key points to notice. And what we could say about it is it splits up into a front and a back, right, the front being to here, the back being this part, right? Oh look, when I do that you can see there's a sort of a triangle at the front. There, you see there's a triangle, the front part has like a triangle. Well, the back has a sort of triangle too, between these points. It sort of has two. So there's a front and a back, and then there's a left and a right. Right? A left and a right. And if you put that together, and you drew like a compass points, a north, a south, and an east and a west, and you'd have a line going that way and a line going that way. Well, let's look at that on the picture, finally. So this is from my lovely Franklin Method book, Conditioning for Dance. Of course, I've lost the page now. It's bound to happen. So, you know, I think I'll take a breath and then I find it. Isn't that good? So, let's see if we can see the picture. A little bit tricky. I can't fathom out the camera here. There we go. So, what we might be able to see here is that it has that cross there, right? The cross. And it divides the pelvis into front and back, and a left and a right, but it's also into four separate pie pieces. So you could say there's a front right, a back right, a front left, a back left. And there, in fact, are the muscles that it would represent. So the different arrangements, but you can see some of those lines are actually muscularly in the pelvic floor. So there are muscle arrangements that support that compass-like cross. So what we're going to do to have an experience of breathing and also the pelvic floor is to connect to those separate quadrants, if you like, and see if putting our attention and our breath can make a change to the quality of the pelvic floor in those areas. So we'll just sit for a moment. We are going to actually stand and feel these places, but sit for a moment and just get a tuning in of your breath. Where do you feel your breath? You might feel there's a movement within the pelvic floor already as you breathe in and out, that there's some sort of change in your pelvic floor. So you might sense, I'm inviting you to sense, that as you breathe in, there's a slight widening of your pelvic floor. And as you breathe out, there's a slight narrowing of your pelvic floor. I'll give you that one. So breathing in and sensing there's a slight widening. And breathing out, a slight narrowing. What do you sense down there? Anything? It may be nothing, and that's okay. We want to see if we can build awareness. There isn't a right or a wrong, it's just exploration. But if we do want to feel more, this is a really great exercise to tap into that. Now you could do this seated, but I'm going to stand because I can kind of, well, firstly I can actually breathe better when I'm standing. But so let's touch the front area here, and can you feel those bones that were mentioned? The pubic bones here, at the front here. You can feel it's like a bridge going across. You know, behind there's your bladder. And then we'll take a little more attention to the right of that. Okay, now put another hand and we're going to see if we can find the sitting bone of that side, and you may need to like stick your butt out a bit and kind of feel in there. Yeah, and we're looking for that sitting bone, the right sitting bone. And if you can, keep a hand on there and a hand on the right side. Now if it feels really uncomfortable, you can take your hands away from there, but let's just see for a few seconds if we can just rub a little. And then pause, relax as much as you can, and just sense the space between those 2 points. There's your front right triangle. Or front right piece of pie, if you like. Let's put all of our attention, our breath, right into that space. So for maybe 20-30 seconds, if you need to let go of your hands, let go, but breathe into that space. And of course, breathe out of that space. You may feel slight imperceptible movement between your hands. Or if you're not using your hands, just sense that space. Now, one hand onto the sit bone, right sit bone, The other hand is going to stroke down and find the tailbone, the coccyx. And again, you can just rub those two areas. And so it's on the inside, in that space, that's the back right area of the pelvic floor. And we're going to, same exercise, breathe with all of your focus, all of your attention into that space. Do you feel any movement under your fingers? Put all of your being into the breath in that area. Shake out the hands. And then we'll touch front right side, tailbone, and visualize the whole right side and breathe into the whole right side. So that whole half of the pelvic floor. You can relax the hands if you need to. So now let's see if we can notice any change from that awareness practice. In your posture, do you notice anything feels different in your body? You might notice within your foot, for example, if you feel more grounded in the foot, you might feel more soft in the foot or a little more lifted in the foot. It depends on you. You might feel a difference in the chain through your knees or your hip joints. Feel a little more lifted on that side into my pelvis, like rather than too much of a crease, I feel a little flatter in here. My knee feels more comfortable and my foot feels more sort of spread into the earth. I might even have impacted my shoulder if I lift my arm. Actually that's very noticeable, and this is usually my stiffer shoulder, and this shoulder actually feels much lighter than this one. You notice what you notice. I'm sharing my experience. Okay, we're going to do that same experiment onto the other side. And you may not need to touch, but let's just do the little body geography. I think it's good to do. We touch the left kind of side of the pubic bones, left side of the pubic symphysis, the join there. And we can touch the left sit bone. If you feel that there's no sort of sensation happening, here's one thing you can do. And that's pat gently at the front here, into that sort of front half here, if you like, in there. And that might just sort of wake things up a little bit if you feel that you're not feeling it as much as you might like to feel. So then we get that little bit of awareness and tingle. And then we can do our breathing into that space. Okay, ready, you might have felt some little shift, little change. Let's take attention to the back, and of course again you could just sort of tap a little bit into the back part, or then connect tailbone and sitting bone, and you're feeling that whole area, back left quadrant. Breathing into that space. Trusting in that connection. Now let's take the whole left side, so pubic bone to tailbone, whole left side, breathing, 4 or 5 breaths into that side, all of your attention. Now, standing, notice any changes. Posture, level of comfort and ease in standing. Any changes to the feet or knees? Oops, I've been grabbed. Presence of mind. You may feel more relaxed, comfortable, naturally lifted. My shoulders, my arms feel more comfortable. That's the first thing I notice. And also a little more softness in my jaw, I also notice. And it will shift every time you do these sorts of practices. And of course we did a long kind of version there. You could also do the whistle-stop tour of breathing into the pelvis, of doing, the front half, the back half, one side, the other side. Because you may notice discrepancies when you're doing this. So you could say, oh, I could really feel my right side, but I couldn't feel my left. Or my concentration went when I did one side. And that probably is because there's a disconnect in the brain to that part of the body. So that's even more reason to practice when you notice you find it difficult or don't like it. So that's the challenge, and we like a challenge, don't we? Yes, we like a challenge. Okay, so that's the breathing exercise into the pelvis. Now if we sit down again, and I'm going to say, let's focus on the breathing, again, of the whole pelvic floor as you breathe in, and see if there's a change in what you notice. Do you feel the whole pelvis shape change when you breathe? So here's what is happening with the pelvic floor as a whole when you breathe in and out. Your diaphragm, let's just give a little attention to our ribs here, lower ribs, give a little rub. Polish your ribs. And a little tap around there. And what we're tapping isn't just ribs, but underneath there is your diaphragm. It's attached to your lowest 6 ribs, and it's like a very large dome shape, like that. It's attached to your spine as well. So, sitting on top of your diaphragm, you have the heart in the centre and then the 2 lungs here. So if I want to take a breath in, naturally you'd say I'm going to have more volume in the lungs. So the lungs are going to go out that way, but they're also going to go down. And the diaphragm, the way it works is we're negative pressure breathers, so a vacuum is made by the diaphragm going down in the centre, which creates more space for the lungs to fill. So that's the first idea, is your diaphragm in the centre goes down. And when you breathe out, the diaphragm goes up. This is the centre part of the diaphragm. That isn't the only thing that happens. The centre part will go down, and then also the ribs will go up out to the sides. That's also happening, which helps the diaphragm go down more, you might say. When you breathe out, the ribs will come down again, and the diaphragm then comes up. So breathing in, the diaphragm goes down, helps makes the ribs go out to the side a little bit. That's also the diaphragm. Exhale, and we're getting something of that. Breathing in and breathing out. Just calming. So when the diaphragm moves down, that means all of what is underneath the diaphragm has to move somewhere. What is underneath? That is our abdominal organs, and unlike the lungs, they can't like take in more and take out more. Yes, of course, when you go to the bathroom, etc., or when you eat a big meal, all of that changes. But as is now, like the lungs go expand and contract, your organs can't change to like make a big difference in volume. So that means they have to go somewhere else in your body. There's not really much space to go a lot back because your spine is there. So you could say, well, they can go to the sides here, and they could go in front here. So let's see, is that true? I'll take a few breaths. We could also model this. So there's a hand for the diaphragm, and a hand here, it's like a little on the side wall here. And you can feel, as you breathe in, this goes down, organs move out into this net, if you like. Here. And as you exhale, the net contracts and the diaphragm goes up. Breath in, diaphragm down. Do you feel your hand move, your organs moving into your hand? Noticing state of mind, and perhaps the expansiveness of your breath is a little greater too. Well, our cavity inside, it would be helpful if I had a balloon here to show you. So we're going to imagine the balloon. I hope you can imagine the balloon, and it's not a super roundy balloon, but maybe one of those more like sausager-like balloons, right? So let's imagine this cavity here as a balloon, and when the diaphragm goes down, if you were to push down on the balloon, it would make things expand this way. We kind of just discovered that, I hope. But what about down here as well, the bottom part of the balloon? It's, unless we're going to hold tight, rigid, the balloon also has to go that way a little bit too, right? It also has to move and expand, not just down, just like our lungs, they don't just go down, but they go in all dimensions out into the space, right, that they can move. So the pelvic floor has to respond by going a little down, a little out, a little wide. It has to widen to embrace and support the organs as they go down. So sometimes, so we'll try that. Let's see, is that true? So if I model one hand with the diaphragm and the other hand with the for the pelvic floor, and I breathe in, and then breathe out. You model you. And if you're not sure of that, you sense I can't feel that, what we're going to do is try the opposites, because that might sort of help us. And I'm going to say, as you breathe in, let's say keep the pelvic floor rigid. Hold the pelvic floor tight. Right? So take a nice deep breath in with your diaphragm, but keep your pelvic floor tight. Oh gosh. So So here's what I noticed straight away. I've like hit a wall. My diaphragm has hit a wall. I want to breathe in deeply, but my pelvic floor is clenching. My diaphragm doesn't want to move either. What did you notice? Try it again and just see if you can feel that. Hold your pelvic floor tight. So, interesting. Let's see if we can do it and get that nice flow. They're both diaphragms, right? They're both these sort of like almost jellyfish-like or oceanic feel to them, with movement one with the other, in concert with the other. Allow yourself to just be in the moment and feel whatever you can feel, but it might help with modelling with the hands. So as you breathe in, as you breathe out, there's a slight lift of the pelvic floor. Breathing in, widening. Breathing out, a slight narrowing, a slight lift. Very subtle. You don't have to model, but just feel inside yourself. How is that experience? So that's just a little exploration into those connections with the diaphragm, a little bit of abdominal wall and the pelvic floor. And just the impact of good breathing there can have profound effects if you are able to tune in and do that regularly through the day. Because you're breathing all of the time, it's something that the more you tune in and feel it, the more awareness you'll build in those areas and improve your general overall breathing and overall health. So I hope you're inclined to just take those little movement snacks to find some stillness and mindfulness and practice those breathing techniques. You don't even have to touch, for example, where you could say, I'm thinking right side, left side pubic bone, left sit bone, okay, I'm going to feel that, sense it and breathe into that area, etc. So you can do those anywhere. I hope you agree. So now we're going to move just a little bit and tune up the two halves of the pelvic floor. So first of all, just shift your weight right and left, and I like to think of this as skating the sit bones. I've never really been skating, done a little skiing, but maybe you've done roller skating or ice skating or something. I'm like, whoosh. It's winter's coming here at the moment, but it's no snow, but you're dreaming of a white Christmas and you feel the crisp air on your face and you have rosy cheeks and maybe you're skating on a pond, beautiful trees. I'm picturing that. It makes it more fun than four walls. Maybe you don't like skating, right? So, or you might think pedaling a bike. There's an action here of like pedaling. And the more you kind of do this and start to loosen up, the more you kind of retract the sitting bone up, hoist it inside you so you're lifting more butt off the chair. Now those different parts of the pelvic floor are starting to get a little more energy, right? A little more energy and activation. Hurrah for that. Now if you've got Franklin balls, all the better. Because, and especially these ones, the delicate ones, but all of them, they're all amazing. We're going to put them underneath those sit bony things. And this gives a little bit more awareness and action because you're now a little less stable on the balls. It's not something that you, unless you practice Franklin method and you sit on the balls a lot. Hey, and you can. So if you do need to sit a lot, sit on a good chair and come on and off the balls occasionally to start to get this more activation. So now I'm going to get a fidgety bottom and start to wiggle a little bit and squiggle. You can always replace or adjust where the ball is. I'm like a fidgety kid. And as I do this, I'm like, I can feel my sit bone. I can feel, a little bit of cushion with my butt there. So you're massaging some of that cushion. An image I like of that is, I hate seeing cushions where on a sofa or a bed where they're all like squished and squashed together. You don't want your butt cheeks to be all like pressed together. It's not great. You lose your circulation, you press on nerves, you know, your glute nerve or your sciatic nerve. So we're plumping up the cushions. Plump up the cushions. Then what we'll do is a little bit of pelvic tilting. So hands onto the pelvis here, and you can feel these lovely pelvic crests on the pelvis. That's these lovely crests here. I think they're like elephant's ears. Rub your elephant's ears. And then of course we've got the sit bones that we're sitting on, remember, and the tail could swing a little bit free here, right? The tail could swing a little free. So we'll do a little of that too in a moment. So we're a little bit lifted with the pelvis now, and we'll do some pelvic tilts. So that means we'll tilt the pelvis forward as if you're going to push these points forward into your hands and your tail back, and then we'll swing the tail forwards and these points go back. Right? So and you can do this with the breath if you like, breathing in as you roll the pelvis forward, breathing out and swing your tail forward. And maybe you notice that as you do this, this is also impacting your back and your belly muscles. So I can also feel that. I've got an archy back and a spread belly, and then I've got contracted belly and a spread back. See if you can do that. Like gathered in. And I have lovely images here of in dresses, like I have here, like little ruches. My back's now ruched, and this one is spread, and then this one becomes ruched, and the back is spread. So it's impacting the back, the abdominals, and the pelvic floor. So can you also feel that as you come forward, your sit bones widen, and as you tilt the pelvis back, sit bones narrow. Do you feel the pelvis as a whole widens as your back is arched and narrows when your tail is tucked under? Let's explore that. That's maybe a little more obvious. You can even say it to yourself. Wider pelvis, narrow pelvis. Wide pelvis, narrow pelvis. Wide pelvis, narrow pelvis. Okay. Then we can sit in just a nice tall position and focus on the tailbone. So it's a movable bone, your coccyx, and this is very much a mental exercise of imagining that your coccyx is like a little pendulum, and it's going to swing forward and back. This is so imperceptible, you shouldn't really see your body move. But stay as relaxed in the shoulders, the eyes, the jaw as you can while you do it. It might be that you want to take an in-breath as the tail pendulum swings back and an exhale as it swings forward. You might, not necessarily. It will be good to just be able to breathe and feel that happen anyway, but it might just be the case because if the pelvic floor is widening on an inhale, you might feel the tail swing back just a little, and exhale that it slightly swings forward and up. Okay, let's come off the balls and just notice your seat. Has your feeling of your seat changed? Interestingly, I feel very spread in my seat. A bit like the way my foot felt when I did those breathing exercises and connected to the pelvic floor. What do you notice? let's do a little pelvic floor training of those two halves. So I've got a nice picture here. Oh, yeah, before that, I found out this other lovely picture showing what we were just doing. So here's what we were just doing, sitting on balls. And here we can see this front area, front triangle, that as we roll forward and arch the back, you see how that front triangle becomes a little wider. Okay, and we see that. And then when we roll forward, the muscles of the front triangle become a little narrower, like squeezing in. So this is a coupled action that whenever the spine is in this extension, arch position, that the pelvic floor also widens. And what we're seeing in this picture is the widening and narrowing of the front triangle. That's a nice picture for you to see. Sitting on the balls gives you more range of motion. That's the art of the sitting on the balls. You're getting more sensation, you've got more range of motion, like a ball bearing, you've got more space to move. And the reason we want to perhaps put a focus on this is because in that area of the pelvic floor, this is the urogenital triangle, the perineum here, so urogenital triangle, the urethra and the vagina are right in that area. So we want to strengthen those muscles, make them, rather have more tone to them. And that means widening them and narrowing them. It's not just contracting them, but movement of the bones is ideal way to practice movement and tone muscles. So back to where I was going. And what we're going to do is take pelvic push-ups as our next exciting adventure. That means sitting onto the balls, onto one ball, excuse me. So what you can see is a pelvis, let's do it this way. You've got sit bones balanced on one ball, and on the other side we're going to lift and lower the sit bone up and down. So we are training each half of the pelvis specifically. So we can isolate that by sitting on one ball and doing some push-ups. You like pelvic floor push-ups. So these are super exercises to do. So we just need one ball. And I'm going to put it under my left. So it is my left. And now I'd be very wonky if I were sitting here, like I've got one sit bone up and the other is down, so I'm lopsided, right? Like that, I'm lopsided. Now what I want to do is now, actually I want to relax my shoulders a little bit, so you can roll your shoulders. We'll do a little tap of the shoulders. And a little squeeze. So give a squeeze and a lift of your shoulder. And then the other one, give a squeeze and lift. And you might say, what have my shoulders got to do with this? So we want to be as relaxed in this area so that we don't create tension while we do it. We want to use the deeper core pelvic muscles and not add like, oh, my shoulders are up here. So relaxed shoulders. Oh gosh, there we go. So let's lift up the sit bone that's dangling on the chair. We're going to lift it up and like retract it in the body. And then slowly lower it down. Keep your breathing smooth and even. And how many of these might you do? I don't know, maybe 8 to 10, something like that. Less, perhaps, to begin with. 6 to 8 is perhaps enough. And can you put your focus on sit bone, lifting, as if you're pulling it right inside your body, and then retracting and placing it down neatly. I think of putting it like putting down a china cup or something like that. Lovely. And we're going to keep the sit bone lifted and swing it back and forth. Again, perhaps like a pendulum. There's a bit of a balance challenge here as you're sitting on the ball. Easy flowing breaths. Right side of the pelvic floor is getting this kind of little twisty action. And the left side's getting a balance challenge because it's a stability. And then we'll come off the ball. And just noticing the sides. So I'm deeply sunken in the chair. I think I have become a chair, a cushion in a chair. You notice what you sense too. A little more lifted on this side. Okay, let's do the other side. So ball underneath the sit bone, and we do some push-ups or pull-ups. I don't know which you call them. So lowering the sit bone down, retracting, drawing it up, lowering and lifting. And you might feel, some abdominal action here too, but see if you can focus as much attention on that whole half of the pelvis, lifting, hoisting you up that side. Up we go. And then gently placing that down. And easy breathing. And then with the sit bone lifted, we'll glide it forwards and back. Easy relaxed shoulders. And easy breathing. Just do what you can do. Perhaps imagine it's a paintbrush, that you're painting a neat line along the chair. Ta-da! Then we can come off. And notice your seat. Not just your seat, but how is your seated position? Is your posture comfortable? That you're lifted and natural without having to force your posture. Notice your breathing. You're comfortable, calm. I also notice that my jaw feels a lot more relaxed too from doing that. And there's a very strong connection with pelvic floor and jaw, so if we can release one, we can release the other. So maybe a little attention to the jaw too. Just rub your jaw, open and close with a 5 to 5. Super. And then we are ready to do the exercise that will train the pelvic floor every day. If you sit a lot, this is what I recommend. Encourage yourself to get up out of the chair for whatever excuse you can find, just to go and do something, shake it up. Just get up and down out of the chair. So if you're sitting for ages, just get up and down out of the chair. And it's a good pelvic floor practice because this is what we can practice. So as you come forwards, notice pelvic floor widens. As we just come back, pelvic floor narrows, widens, narrows. Tune into that. Widen, narrow. So we widen, then as we come up, pelvic floor is going to lift us up out of the chair. Can we do that? Yes. Try it. So pelvic floor lifts you up. Feel your pelvis widen as you come down. Soft landing. Lovely. So what could we have? Like the Franklin Method image of rocket boosters. Sit bones as rocket boosters. So your sit bones are rocket boosters. Oh my gosh, I'm a fire, rah! And then we're going to lower, little sensors, pelvic floor lifts us. Strong pelvic floor supports us as we lower slowly. Super. And you can do this, I don't know, an extra 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. Make an excuse to get up and down, just because you're going to switch all of these powerful leg muscles, butt muscles, pelvic muscles to do that. As long as your knees are happy, and if your knees aren't so happy, give them a warm-up caress first. And then I'm going to do it 3 more times. Here I'm going to focus on sit bones kind of coming together to lift me. Sit bones a little widening. And up we go. And last one. Ta-da! We're up and about. I'm going to shake that out. Shake it in the air. And when you get out of your chair, here's a little routine. I'm going to sit down again. I'm going to get up. I'm going to shake out. You can say, okay, I'll get back to work. I just did that. Get back to your whatever you're doing, seated in your chair, and take those little mini movement breaks. And already that just energized a little bit just from doing that. So I hope all of this is a fun and useful exploration. It's subtle, but it's very powerful. It is our very essence of being a human, to focus on being a human. Mindfulness practice at its best. I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.